So I wanted to pop on here and talk about something that's kind of like the buzz thing that's going around in the farming and homesteading communities today. You guys probably already know this, but if you don't, as of June 11th, 2023, there are going to be some laws that are changing that deal with the medications that you can get over the counter. So the things that you would normally go to like Tractor Supply and get if you wanted to get like penicillin, that's not going to be available over the counter with places like Tractor Supply or your local feed stores anymore as of June 11th. So today I want to talk about the FDA Guidance for Industry GFI number 263. We're going to talk about how it's changing. It doesn't just affect antibiotics, but that's the majority of it, why it's changing, and some things that you can do to protect your herd, to protect your livestock. But before I do, I want to say thank you for tuning in to my channel. I know this is a little baby channel and it's my goal to hit 500 subscribers here soon. So if you are a homesteader like me and you like watching the homesteading videos and you like learning about this kind of stuff, then please consider subscribing to this channel so you don't miss future homesteading videos and things like this. So I'm personally relatively new to homesteading. Like, I've had chickens and ducks for a while, and I grew up on a dairy farm, but that was my dad that was doing the dairy farm. Like, I helped and I was there and I learned, but it was still my dad's farm. It wasn't until last year that I got my first goat, and it's kind of escalated. What do you have? Let me know in the comments what you have for animals. It went from chickens and ducks to goats. I have donkeys, a Shetland pony, pigs, and I have a lamb and a cow. So even though these laws have been like in progress for a while, it was still new to me because I'm kind of still new to this way of life. So I dug down, I did a bunch of research, and I even attended a meeting with our local cooperative extension to kind of get as much information about this as I could so that I knew. So now I'm going to come on here and show you guys what I learned. So basically what this all boils down to is something called ARM, or antimicrobial resistance. So in a nutshell, we've been overusing antibiotics, not just for livestock, but for people, for pets, for everybody. We've been overusing antibiotics for a really long time, and it's gotten to the point where things that would normally work against different diseases or bacteria are no longer working. And it's actually a worldwide problem. It's caused a lot of deaths. They're saying that bacteria that we used to be able to fight off with these antibiotics, they're not working as well anymore, and they are planning on, if we keep doing what we're doing now, it's going to be the world's leading cause of deaths. So in 2019, 1.3 million people died from this. The World Health Organization is estimating that right now it's up to 4.9 million people. And by 2050, they're saying it's going to be up to 10 million deaths a year if we don't do something to change. So this is one of the changes that they're making. And this isn't just the US that's making changes like this, it's the entire world. So every country is trying to come together and make some sort of change. One of those changes is going to affect livestock owners. So if you're a homesteader or a farmer and your goat had pneumonia and you needed to treat them with an antibiotic, you could run out to Tractor Supply, grab the antibiotic over the shelf, pay 20 or 30 bucks for it, or 70 or 80 depending on what the medicine is, and take it home and administer it yourself. But they're going to be changing the way that these medications are labeled, so you will need a vet in the future. After June 11th, you're going to need a vet in order to obtain that prescription medication. The vet won't have to administer it, but you're going to have a prescription in order to pick it up anywhere. The more an antibiotic is used, the more strength that bacteria gets against that so that they can fight it. They kind of like build an immunity against it. You probably already knew that. But what's crazier, and I didn't know this is all new information to me, is that different bacteria actually can share genetic information, and that genetic information includes resistance. So like, say I'm a bacteria and I am now resistant to penicillin, and I run up against another bacteria and we speak the same language, then I can be like, here, have some of my immunity to penicillin. So even though my buddy bacteria over here has never been exposed to penicillin in his entire existence, he now has that same immunity. I didn't know that they can share immunity to other bacteria that are close to them. And the one problem that we have with this is that we are often in close proximity to our pets, to our livestock, and to other people who have used antibiotics. So even though you might only be treating, say you're only treating the animals with penicillin, the animal's bacteria can share information to other bacteria that might be on you and start creating a resistance, even though you've only ever treated your animals. That's my understanding of it. If somebody is more science savvy than I am, feel free to correct me in the comments if I explain something wrong. But the main thing that I got out of that was that they can share genetic information, including antibiotic resistance. The way the laws are changing, it's not changing how you use the medication, it's just changing how the medications are labeled. So if you already have penicillin in your cupboard, you're still going to be able to use it. But anything that is sold after June 11th, anything that's packaged after June 11th has to have that label on it that says that you need to have a script from your vet. Here's a list of some of the antibiotics that are going to be affected and some of the brand names of these antibiotics. Not all drugs are going to be affected and not all antibiotics are going to be affected. They're targeting the ones that are considered medically important for human use. So there still are a couple of antibiotics that you might be able to find on your shelf somewhere. All right, so here's my non-science-y self that's going to try to pronounce some of these, and if I mispronounce them, I do apologize. You've got carbadox, bacitracin, barbamycins, monosin. Those are some that aren't going to be changed. And you're also your ivermectin, that's not going to be affected. Your dewormers, those aren't going to be affected. There is one other class of medication that is going to be affected for cattle, and I'll get to that in a second. They are requiring the vets to have a valid vet-client-patient relationship in order to prescribe these medications. So that means the vet is taking responsibility for the medical decisions and the medical care of your animals, and you, as the client, are agreeing to follow your vet's instructions. And it also says that the vet has to have sufficient knowledge about your animals and be available for a follow-up if it's needed. So if you give medication to your animal and something happens, you have to be able to reach out to that vet again. In the cooperative extension training webinar meeting that I attended, they said that this valid vet-client-patient relationship can only exist if your vet is personally acquainted with your animals and how you take care of them, or they've recently seen them, or they make timely visits out to your farm. So generally that's usually annually. So there's a lot of gray area here, and from what I understand, it's kind of up to the vet to make that decision if they have a valid vet-client-patient relationship with you. So say you were to take your animal into the emergency room and see a vet that you have never seen before, they are now acquainted with your animal because they have met your animal and seen your animal, but they haven't made those timely visits to your farm. But because they've actually had that appointment, they could make the decision that they have that valid vet-client-patient relationship. A lot of this is going to boil down to the relationship that you have with your vet, how comfortable your vet is prescribing you medication. So they may require you to bring your animal in, or for you to allow them on your farm to see your animals before they prescribe you something. Or maybe you have a really good relationship with your vet and they'll just be like, yeah, here's the prescription, go pick it up, or, come pick it up. But if you don't have a livestock vet, I would seriously consider going out and getting one so that you can start this relationship. So if something happens in the future, then you're covered. I know there are a lot of concerns about this because this is a federal law, but there are some pretty remote places in America where you can't get to a livestock vet. There's a shortage of livestock vets, and some entire counties don't have any of them. So you'd have to like actually find a vet out of the county and pay a ton of money. And there's people out there that do most of their vet care on their own because they don't have access to a vet. So just like humans, like me and you, have virtual healthcare options, so we can do like a telemedicine thing where we will talk to a doctor that we may have never seen before, and they can prescribe medication or give us direction on what we need to do. There is a service like that for animals. There's a couple of them actually. I only found one though that has livestock vets, and that's called Vetster. So I reached out to them and I spoke with them and I said, hey, like, do you have livestock vets? And they do have livestock vets that are licensed to practice in the US, Canada, and the UK. Not all states allow virtual prescriptions though. So right now the states that do are New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, DC, Washington, Delaware, Idaho, Michigan, Oklahoma, Virginia, and Vermont. So those are the states that will allow virtual prescriptions. If you're in any of those states, Vetster might be something that you might need to use on an emergency basis. The prices are all set by the vet. So I can't tell you how much it's going to cost. It's kind of like a marketplace for vets, like an online marketplace, and each vet is going to have their own prices. If that is something that you think that you might need in the future, or if you don't have access to a vet anywhere close to you, I will put a link in the description box, and that will give you 40% off of your first visit. So if that is something that you could use, or that you find yourself in a position where you're like, hey, there's only one vet 50 miles around and he's on vacation, what do I do? You could always try Vetster and see if you can get a hold of a livestock vet that practices in your area. And there is one more change that's being made with this new law, and I kind of saved it to the end because it's tacked onto this new law of changing the prescription labels, but it has nothing to do with antibiotics, and it's a little bit different with how it's being run. And that has to do with beef cattle implants. So right now, if you're currently using beef cattle implants, there's really no guideline on how you use them. So some people use them once, some people use them once per production phase, some people use them multiple times per production phase. And how they're changing that part of the law is that on the label, it's actually going to have to say how many times per production phase the implants can be used. If the label is not changed and it doesn't say that, then it's going to be assumed that you can only use the beef cattle implant once per production phase. So if you're currently raising beef cattle and you're using implants, then you might want to check the labels after June 11th and see if anything's changed on what you use, and see if you have to make any changes to the things that you're doing. So I'm curious, what do you think about these new laws? I know I understand where they're coming from. I still think it kind of sucks. You know, it's going to affect people, but let me know in the comments what you think about it, you know, how you think it's going to affect you, and if you've made any plans. Do you already have a vet? If not, do you need to find a vet? If this video was helpful and you learned something today, please feel free to share it with anybody else that might be worried about the new law or confused about how it's going to affect them. And I also wanted to note that we just started a Facebook community. So if you want to join our little homesteading Facebook community, I'll post that link in the description box as well. And YouTube, the wonderful YouTube algorithm, has decided that you might like this video. So I'll see you over there next. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.